All right, it was one of our topics on the Big Five at 9:05, by the way. And if you missed the Big Five this morning, you can always download it on the iHeartRadio app or any podcast app, by the way. But let's get into it here for our weekly City Hall segment. Speaking of St. Catherine Street, you know, it's 11 kilometers long. Right now, the vacancy rate there in July of this year was at 18.2%. 105 of the 578 storefronts unoccupied, for rent, or abandoned. So the news from St. Catherine Street, particularly the eastern side of St. Catherine Street, are really bad. But at the same time, the same statistics, vacancy rates in all other parts of the city with many other major commercial arteries, streets like Monkland and NDG, Wellington and Verdun, they're seeing pretty good times, actually. Some numbers that are astoundingly low. Let's find out what's happening here. Sterling Downey is a city councillor for Verdun, and he's on the line. Hi, Sterling. How you doing?
Good. Yourself? Good to hear from you today, finally.
Yeah. So, Sterling, you walk the streets that everyone else walks on, and let me read your text. I'm going to start off with a text. I got this morning when we talked about it on the Big Five.
Yep.
Elias, I was walking down St. Catherine Street, heading east this morning. I have seen 3 groups of people shooting up heroin. They are doing it right as everyone walks by. I cannot believe it. One is doing this right next to the police station near the McDonald's. The police saw it, just walked away. They didn't want to deal with it. It's shocking. That's one listener. Now, it's just a text. I don't know how much it is. I can't verify it, but that's one text message from a listener. So what are your thoughts, Sterling, when you hear that?
Well, I mean, okay, there's context obviously to that, but I'm not going to dismiss it. Obviously, yes, there is. There's a high. We know for a fact that since the pandemic and now we see it more and more. There's a lot more homelessness in the street with, reno evictions and the cost of housing and the lack of housing for people in apartments. There's a lot of that. There's also a lack of social services for people that are in those situations that we see. So more and more we are seeing people in those situations on the streets. So I believe the person who wrote in, it's very possible. I mean, I know the church that's across the street from the police station. It's not that the police, I don't think, don't do anything. I think that people have to understand that there's social service workers and street workers and organizations that are called by the police to come and intervene, because we don't want the police arresting people because they're in a what's the word I'm looking for? A situation that it's not an arrest that's going to solve it. They need help. They need services, right? And they need somebody who's qualified to go in there, like a social service, a psychosocial intervention worker or something, or a street worker to go in and help them. So I don't think they just ignore it. I think that it might seem that way because they're not arresting people for doing it, but I don't think the solution is putting people in jail because they have an addiction or because they're homeless.
So I struggle with that, Sterling, because if I were to go to Old Montreal, the City Hall, and I were to do that, I'd get arrested. And I could just say, well, I'm just doing it for a stunt. It won't solve the problem if you arrest me. I'm going to get arrested. So,
I believe there was somebody in the former mayor's cabinet that was caught doing something in City Hall that had to do with drugs a long time ago. I don't know if we look in the I don't know.
But I mean, I tire of that, because you know what? The people that pay taxes, the people that go to work every day, boy, if they were to break the law, they couldn't use hey, you know what? Arresting me wouldn't solve the problem. So you shouldn't arrest me. And,
no, I think the conversation too about the decriminalization of drugs is a big issue too, and all that, because again, it's about services and help, right? Don't forget, these people that you see on the street that are in that situation weren't born in that situation. They were taxpayers. They were law-abiding citizens. They were people who raised families in some cases, or are from families. These are people who paid rents. They fell into difficult times. It's no different than any functional drug addict or alcoholic that's hiding in a condo tower somewhere, like Cristal or something, where you see people who have means and who are going out and working and they're using drugs or something recreationally and they manage it. We have to remember that people are people, right? And I mean, people suffer from addictions and things like that. What the problem is, I think, is the fact that we see more and more of it now. And I think what the issue is that it's really sad that we don't see the services to help these people, because I don't think anyone wants to see these people be arrested and put in jail. I think they want to see them get help so they can get better, healthier, and become citizens who are able to function and do things necessary. I think
but
we can all
at
agree
what
on that.
point? Well, no, I don't think we can all agree on that. And
No?
I think that, at one point, what if it gets to 30% vacancy rate? Let's say through the gay village. Let's say it gets to 35%, 40%. Well, then, you know what? But people are people. Like, is that going to be the response? Like, at a certain point.
No, but are we talking about the vacancy rate or people who are homeless getting help that they need? I mean, if we're talking about the vacancy rate is a whole other issue. Right now, I'm talking about people that are homeless getting services.
Sorry, we can't have it both ways, Sterling, because I asked you a question about vacancy rates, and then and obviously I brought up a text message from a listener, and you brought the two together, right? It wasn't they are related.
Well, they are related. Well, because we live in a city. It's all related. We live in a city. We share public space. And we share public space with people with different socioeconomic situations or different struggles in life. Some people are doing well. Some people are doing poorly. It doesn't mean that people are less citizens or lesser of citizens just because they're in a down and out situation. It doesn't mean that people that are in a better situation are better. It means that we should all be working together. Vacancy rates is a problem too, right? We've seen a lot of things change after the pandemic. I don't want to use the pandemic as an excuse, but we did see a lot of people transitioning to purchasing online, for example. We know that generationally younger people purchase things online. They don't go to stores as much. We've seen downtown areas transition, in my own opinion, and I worked in bars and restaurants for a very long time when I was younger. Like, we've seen it become more about nightlife downtown now, or bars and restaurants and entertainment and movie theaters and concerts in the Quartier des Spectacles than necessarily for detail stores that were shopping. I mean, I used to be a partner in a detail store on Sainte-Catherine Street. People seem to be using these places less and less, and the markets are transitioning. Offices closing downtown, so there's less people out at lunchtime. Universities moving in and buying up a lot of real estate on the streets now. If you look at the eastern side of Sainte-Catherine Street, exactly like you mentioned, around the Fofone Electric and all that, where I've been doing my festival for 28 years.
Yeah. And listen,
so I've watched
Sterling,
that area transition.
We have a more resilient downtown simply because we have a downtown where people live, right? Not the case. The case in a lot of North American cities. But let me just bring it to the good news, right? Because along with this news of St. Catherine, okay, and this is why I've got to ask the question about the drug use, because as I see other commercial arteries, and I guess you have something to crow about. Wellington Street now down to 6%. Monkland and NDG 4.3%. It was over double that in recent history on Monkland. Masson and Rosemount 3.2. Jerry 4.3. Fleury 3.3. Mount Royal 5.9. There's drug use on Mount Royal Avenue, Sterling. There are people that face those things. Something's different there, right? So
for sure. And look, I think also in the pandemic, we encouraged a lot of people to shop local, and a lot of people discovered their neighborhoods and started shopping locally. Verdun, I'll give you the example because I've lived here my whole life. In the 1990s, if we would have talked about Wellington Street, we were at probably an 80% vacancy rate because of the biker wars that were going on at the time and a lot of the criminality that was going on. So we saw that. It wasn't homelessness, but it was criminality. There was a lot of drug use. There were a lot of prostitution. There was a lot of people who suffered or were victims from that time. Now it's flourishing, like we say, right? Verdun, Wellington is the coolest street in Canada or whatever, and I downplay that all the time, and I actually denounce it because what I see right now is lots of my businesses and entrepreneurs that came in and opened businesses that are cool are now faced with high rent increases, and they can't stay, and a lot of them are going to be leaving in the next couple of years. So the street's probably going to drop, but we hope that it doesn't. But there's so many factors, I think, that play. The important thing is we have to keep our streets vibrant. We have to invest in our streets. We have to make sure that there's, in these streets that are closed, like Mount Royal, in these streets, that there's entertainment there that draw traffic, that bring people out, so people want to be out there supporting their local businesses. St. Catherine Street is a little bit of an anomaly, right? And it has been for a long time. I remember, and I mean, we're different ages, but remember when the Forum closed down, that whole side of St. Catherine Street never completely ever recovered at one time. Very true. But when the university came in, though, when Concordia came in and bought a lot of real estate and started building and developing it with all the students, it became a little bit more vibrant. The Faubourg would have never lasted if it wasn't for Concordia.
Yeah.
Things like that. But I mean, they're not excuses, but it's like, what do you do, right? Like, what do you do to guarantee? Like, also you have a lot of in the downtown area, you look at the surface traffic on the street and the vacancy rate, but what's happening in the underground malls? I was asking myself this earlier today when I was reading some of the articles. I was like, well, what's the vacancy rate in the malls? Because we have 3 major malls there and everything's happening underground. And I'm curious to know. I haven't seen a statistic come out about the malls. So
Sterling,
level,
we'll try and get some answers on, I guess, Eden Center and Cathedral and
it would
some
be
of the others, right?
It's interesting to see, right? Because I mean, there's a comparison. Has it gone underground to a little bit, or is that taken away because the rents are cheaper in the malls comparatively to street level?
That's the last place I want to be, is underground. To be quite honest.
You and me both. Listen, I consider myself very underground in a lot of things, but the last place I want to be is in an underground mall. Unless me and you want to hang out in the food court after work, and we can sit there and loiter for a couple of hours.
I'll do one of the fancy food courts they've put in there. I forget what it's called, the Timeout Market. I'd do that. I like fancy food court.
There's a bossa from Verdun there. I'm taking you for a sandwich if you want to go. Me and you, sandwich.
That's a great sandwich. Sterling, we're going to leave it there. Talk real soon, okay?
All right. I'll talk to you soon.